For weeks, the USS Gerald R. Ford stood at the center of one of the most dangerous military buildups in the world. A floating airbase, a symbol of American power, a warship built to stay in the fight. But then, after supporting major combat operations in the Middle East, the carrier suddenly changed course and ended up in Croatia. So what happened? Was it battle damage? Was it the strain of war after months at sea? Or was this only the visible sign of a much bigger problem? Tonight, we break down the full story. From its deployment, to Operation Epic Fury, to the onboard fire, and the real reason America's most powerful carrier pulled back after the Iran operations. The USS Gerald R. Ford left Norfolk on June 24, 2025, beginning a major overseas deployment. Over the months that followed, the strike group operated across a wide arc: the Arctic Circle, the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, and eventually, the Red Sea. So by the time people started watching the ship in relation to Iran, this was already a carrier that had been worked hard for months across multiple theaters. Then came the strategic pivot. On February 13, 2026, Washington redirected the Ford toward the Middle East as tensions with Iran surged. That decision mattered because thou do not casually move the world's largest aircraft carrier across theaters unless the situation is serious. The Ford had been operating in the Caribbean, and suddenly it was being folded into a much larger regional buildup, built around deterrence, pressure, and the possibility of direct combat escalation.
The two most powerful air forces in the world will have complete control of Iranian skies, uncontested airspace, and Iran will be able to do nothing about it.
Operation Epic Fury officially began on February 28, 2026 at 1:15 a.m. In the first phase of the campaign, U.S. forces targeted Iran's command and control nodes, intelligence sites, integrated air defenses, ballistic missile positions, anti-ship missile sites, weapons production infrastructure, and naval assets. By March 23rd, the Pentagon's own fact sheet said the campaign had already reached 9,000-plus targets struck, 9,000-plus combat flights, and 140-plus Iranian vessels damaged or destroyed. That is the scale of the war the Ford was supporting. And this is where the USS Gerald R. Ford becomes such a strong story. This is not just a big ship, it is a floating airfield and a mobile strike platform. During this deployment, the ship operated with Carrier Air Wing 8 and its 9 squadrons, including multiple strike fighter squadrons, electronic attack aircraft, airborne command and control aircraft, helicopter units, and logistics support. Public reporting around its Croatia arrival described the carrier as carrying more than 75 military aircraft and being staffed by more than 5,000 sailors and crew. In practical terms, that means the Ford can bring massive air power, surveillance, and coordination capacity into a war zone without relying on a fixed airbase inside the region. It is also important to understand what the ship is and what it is not. The Ford is a supercarrier built for sustained air operations, sea control, fleet support, and power projection. Its core strength is not carrying an embarked marine landing force the way an amphibious assault ship would. Its strength is the air wing, the command capability, the escorts around it, and the fact that it can stay on station and keep launching aircraft day after day. That distinction matters because it explains why the ship's presence in the Iran fight was so important. It expanded striking power, flexibility, and tempo. That is the point where the timeline starts turning towards your title. On March 23rd, the Ford arrived at Suda Bay, Greece, for maintenance and repairs after operating in the Red Sea. The Navy said the ship remained fully mission capable, but the port call was necessary for assessment, repairs, and resupply. Then, after working in Suda Bay from March 23rd to March 26th, the carrier transited the Adriatic and reached Split, Croatia on March 28th. In Split, Navy officials said engineers, naval architects, and maintenance personnel had assessed the damage and supported rehabilitation of the berthing spaces affected by the fire. So how long was the carrier tied to the Middle East fight before showing up in Croatia? If you count from the public order redirecting the Ford toward the Middle East on February 13th to its arrival in Croatia on March 28th, that is about 6 weeks. If you count from the start of Operation Epic Fury on February 28th to Split on March 28th, that is about 1 month in the active Iran conflict phase. That gives your audience a clean way to understand the timeline. Months at sea overall, weeks in the Iran-focused phase, then a pullback into the Mediterranean and Adriatic for recovery and repair. And this is why the story works so well for an 8-minute military explainer, because the Ford did not leave the front because it was dramatically destroyed. It left after doing exactly what carriers are built to do. Move where the crisis is hottest. Add air power and strategic weight. Stay in the fight through a difficult deployment. Absorb damage, then rotate into repair and sustainment when the strain starts showing. That is actually more interesting than a fake cinematic rumor, because it shows the real logic of naval power. Strength, reach, endurance, and the unavoidable maintenance bill that comes after intense operations. And there is one more reason this matters. The Ford was not some isolated ship floating in a vacuum. It was part of a broader U.S. force buildup in and around the region. A buildup that included other naval assets, additional aircraft, and thousands of additional personnel. That means its temporary pullback mattered not just symbolically, but operationally. When a carrier this large steps away from the immediate fight, even for repairs, planners have to rebalance how pressure is maintained and how risk is managed across the theater. So, the clean takeaway for your audience is this. America's largest aircraft carrier was surged toward the Middle East, became part of the Iran war phase, supported a massive strike campaign, suffered a non-combat fire during operations, remained operational, stopped in Greece for repairs and resupply, and then arrived in Croatia on March 28. That is not the story of a carrier being beaten. It is the story of a supercarrier hitting the limits of sustained wartime deployment, and showing how even the most powerful warship in the world still depends on time, logistics, maintenance, and endurance.